With Europe literally left in the lurch and second guessing what Trump will do when it comes to their security, despite being part of NATO, French President Emmanuel Macron has stepped forward. He has offered to extend Paris's nuclear umbrella as a deterrence for its European allies in a move to make the European Union more independent in looking after its own security. France is the only nuclear-armed country in the European Union. Macron's proposal came a day before the European Council leaders are set to meet in Brussels to discuss European defense and security for Ukraine. The EU member states have long relied on the United States of America for its security blanket. However, buffeted by an unreliable US and a Russia on the move, the EU leaders are scrambling for the Trump-era plan for its own defense and continued support for Ukraine. For the European Union, the Thursday meeting of the European Council requires a fine balance, ensuring its ties with the US are not worsened, while bolstering Ukraine's defense capabilities. The US under President Donald Trump has increasingly pressured Kiev to come to the negotiating table and has suspended military aid and intelligence sharing activities following last week's disastrous Oval Office meeting between President Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. For Macron, this moment has long been in the making. The French president, about half a decade ago in 2020, offered to open a security dialogue with the European countries over the role of France's nuclear arsenal in the security of Europe. There were few takers at the time, especially as Germany and the other EU states continue to rely on the US for its security. However, the return of Trump to the White House has changed the rules of the game. The American administration in the last 40-odd days has voted with Russia in the United Nations against European-backed resolutions condemning Moscow for the war in Ukraine. The US has called on European nations to spend more on defense as Washington looks to recalibrate its strategic priorities away from Europe. This time around, he has found support from the likely next Chancellor of Germany, Friedrich Merz, who last month had promised to discuss a France-UK collaborative nuclear security umbrella just before the German federal elections. For the EU, this moment is critical for it to find its own feet when it comes to its defense. Russia has slowly been gaining territory in Ukraine in the last year and has been looking to leverage its opening offered by Trump to return to the global stage. This leaves Europe bereft of partners. Without the US and its ties with Moscow at its lowest point, along with its move to de-risk from China, the EU is scrambling on multiple geopolitical fronts. Macron's proposal may find more backers this time around, but it remains to see whether France could offer a credible deterrence capability for the European nations, and whether they would be willing to let Paris take the lead at this moment in time. Macron considers Russia the biggest threat for the security of Europe. However, a growing number of political parties within the EU member states have been gaining power with their pro-Russia stance. Russia continues to have friends in the governments of Hungary and Slovakia. This brings us to the question of whether the EU could take decisive action on its own, especially for its own defense at the European Council summit later on Thursday. That is all from me today. For more such news and analysis, subscribe below. Thank you for watching The Print.